Punctuation. How to use colons and semicolons. Hello and welcome to VideoJug. We've consulted a selection of the world's leading authorities on punctuation, including the Oxford English Dictionary, the Penguin Guide to Punctuation, and Lynn Truss's Eat, Shoots and Leaves to bring you this guide to using colons and semicolons. Step 1. Colon Introduction. A colon introduces an explanation or elaboration of what has come before it, like this. To use a colon, you will need to be satisfied that the two sections of your sentence aren't complete sentences in their own right, and the information in one section explains the other section. Africa is experiencing a terrible problem, perpetual drought. Or, perpetual drought, poverty, corruption. These are all terrible problems Africa is experiencing. Step 2. Titles. Colons can also be used to separate a work's title and subtitle, as in punctuation. How to use colons and semicolons. Step 3. Ratios. You can use a colon to indicate a ratio. For instance, the woman-to-man ratio is 4:1. Step 4. Semicolon introduction. A semicolon links two complete sentences which work as sentences on their own. It indicates that there is some sort of relationship between the two sentences. Step 5. Stylish semicolons. Using a semicolon is always a literary or stylistic choice, in that if you're using them properly, you could always opt for a full stop or a comma instead. But there is something pleasing about the way a semicolon can link sentences together. For instance, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Could also be written as, it was the best of times, full stop, it was the worst of times. Or, it was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. But it wouldn't be as good, would it? Step 6. Complete sentences. To use a semicolon well, you should be satisfied that the sentences are too closely related to be separated by a full stop, and one sentence isn't a direct explanation of the last. You can do this in list form too. 1. The sentences are too closely related to be separated by a full stop. 2. One sentence isn't a direct explanation of the last. Step 7. Marking important breaks. There is one circumstance where you can use semicolons to break up a very long sentence to help it to be understood. Consider the following sentence. In Chad, where the famine still continues, Western aid workers, in spite of their efforts, are unable to operate, and the people, starving and desperate, are flooding to refugee camps. You can use a semicolon instead of a comma to mark the most important breaks in the sentence, just to aid comprehension, like so. A timely semicolon after to operate splits the sentence up and makes the whole passage easier to understand. Step 8. Joining words. Some words require a semicolon before their use. It is important to remember, though, that certain joining words are more appropriate to commas. Women's conversation is cooperative, while men's is competitive. The joining word while is correctly used when preceded by a comma. Or, women's conversation is cooperative, however men's is competitive. The joining word however is correctly preceded by a semicolon. The words however, thus, therefore, consequently, nevertheless, and meanwhile should all be preceded by a semicolon, while the words and, but, yet, and while should be preceded by commas. Done.